Welcome and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. In this show, we cover a broad range of topics that cater to commercial real estate newcomers and industry leaders alike. I'm your host, Yannis Papadakis, Business Development Manager at Crexi's auction platform, and today we are thrilled to sit down with Michael Beckerman, CEO of CREtech. A little bit about our guest. Michael Beckerman is the CEO of CREtech, the largest global conference and content company devoted to technological innovation in the built world. CREtech's mission is to help the real estate industry reimagine real estate by discovering, adopting, and investing in new technologies and innovation strategies. CREtech's intelligent and event platform inspires the next generation of ideas, processes, and people to champion the world's largest asset class. With a global audience of over 150,000, CREtech's network consists of the world's largest real estate owners, developers, asset managers, and investors, as well as the leading startups and venture firms, all devoted to technology and innovation in the built world. Michael is one of the most sought-after speakers and thought leaders in the real estate tech sector. He has delivered countless keynote presentations at premier global conferences, is a frequent guest on industry podcasts, and also hosts the CREtech Climate Podcast, an educational podcast devoted to driving the real estate industry forward on a path to decarbonize the built environment. Michael has spent his entire 40-year career in the commercial real estate sector. Prior to CREtech, Michael built Beckerman Public Relations into one of the largest real estate marketing and public relations firms in the world, representing many of the premier real estate organizations in the industry before selling his interests in the firm in 2017. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Yanni, good to be with you. I'm a fan of the podcast and a super fan of Crexi. Known the team, the organization, I think from the very, very beginning, from the origins, and been a follower, an admirer ever since, and thrilled to join you on this podcast.
Well, thanks so much for joining. I know we covered your background, but I'd love to hear more about your career path and lessons learned along the way. Can you tell us more about where you're from and how you first got your start in commercial real estate?
Yeah, well, I think first we should probably give a spoiler alert to the listeners and the audience, in the sense that I don't think Crexi did a really good job in screening me for this podcast, because if you've joined looking for some kind of wisdom or inspiration or great anecdotes or amazing lessons learned and things like that, I'm the wrong guy. I've been sort of self-employed entrepreneur since I was in my very early 20s. I was a failed college student and really just been faking it until I can hopefully one day make it for the last 40 years, honestly. And, I always kind of think of myself as an infinite learner and gravitate towards the blank canvas and my own sort of like journey. And so I started out when I was really, really young and was always a fan of like media when we had media back then, like big legitimate print and media. There was such a thing for your younger audience. And I just kind of figured out, how to build a public relations agency. I just kind of watched others, stole from others, learned from others. And I stumbled upon commercial real estate as a sort of a niche after a few years. And I just kept learning how to specialize and specialize and specialize. And I did that, for a very, very long time, and, just made a shit ton of mistakes and, but every day just showed up and, worked hard and continued to do so. And then in about 2017, I was looking for the next blank canvas, and I didn't know anything about technology, and I just was always curious and fascinated by the fact there was no tech sector in commercial real estate. So I just said, I'm going to go, like Wayne Gretzky says, I'm going to go skate where I think the puck's heading. And I'm still kind of waiting, all these years later, but I've been doing ever since is organizing. We started organizing very small meetups, and then realized, we should probably organize bigger and fewer conferences. So, we do one in New York and one in London every year. And it's, we built a big audience, but it's really just about how do we drive innovation? How do we get more people to find out about credible platforms like Crexi in the world's biggest asset class? So that's kind of what we're all about, is trying to be a catalyst for people to find solutions and what have you, like yours and many others.
Well, you mentioned a couple things there I'd like to dig into. First off, any mentors that kind of helped shape your career path, or people that, you learned from that helped, get you on the path that you're on now?
Absolutely not.
Just out there trailblazing.
No, I
Well,
mean,
what about,
it's honestly, yeah, but I'm sorry. It's honestly like when I look back all those years ago, which I don't really reflect much on it. Like, no, I mean, I was young and I didn't have anybody as a mentor, and I didn't really know anybody in business, and I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. My parents were like more coming from the art side. They had a small business. Uh, but no, I didn't really get much help. And along the way, what I realized was, well, just because that was my experience doesn't mean that I need to be like that. So I just kind of always said, well, I then will be a mentor as best I can for anybody that I possibly can. And so I just kind of opened myself up like that now, whether you're a kid in college, or somebody that just graduated, or somebody on your second or third job, or incredibly successful entrepreneur that's looking to understand something about this ecosystem. I'm going to pay it forward as best I can. So the question is, did I have mentors? No. Most of what I learned, Johnny, I just sort of emulated people I didn't know. I read a lot when I was a kid. I read a couple business books that, like, there was one in particular, I can't believe I'm even remembering this. And it was a book that sort of like just taught me everything, because I didn't go to college. So I didn't study any business or anything like that. So I read this book. It was extraordinary. I can't believe I can remember this, because I can't remember what I had for breakfast. It was called When Hollywood Had a King. And it was written by this author. I hope I don't screw this up, called Connie Bruck. I think she was at the Wall Street Journal. And it was about this guy, Lou Wasserman, who started, the biggest talent agency in the world, and sort of how he did it and how he built it. And I just kind of like took a lot of the themes that he used successfully and applied it to my own small little world. And there was a couple other things that I read, but I was always an infinite learner in that way. So yeah.
Awesome.
No real mentors in that way.
Going back to, any early mistakes that maybe you made along the way that helped kind of shape, your decision making, or things that you didn't recognize were, opportunities at the time?
I mean, how much time do we have? It's just like a 4-hour
as long as you need.
I mean, where do you want me to start? Yeah, I mean, so, not to make this too personal, I became a Buddhist a while ago. I've studied Buddhism for a long time now. And I learned this fundamental lesson that your mistakes are your greatest teachers. And so when I was younger, I used to get crushed by my mistakes because there were so many of them. And now I look at them I go, okay, thank you. What's the lesson here? So hopefully I don't repeat it. So there's no like one lesson. I think there was a couple things I learned. I learned the value of specializing and like doing one thing really well. I think in the beginning of my career, I was trying to be all things to everybody. And then you wind up learning that nobody's that good. I mean, nobody, even at the highest echelons of business, it's just impossible. So I just learned over time, do fewer things, focus, specialize. That's what I learned from that book. That book taught me what he did. He picked Hollywood, this guy, Lou Wasserman, and he said, I'm going to represent everybody in Hollywood, the directors, the actors, the screenwriters, everybody. And that's what I did in my early career in real estate. So it took me a while to learn that lesson, but that was a big one. I still make mistakes every freaking day. So no one or two to come to mind. I mean, I could give you thousands, but it's okay. They're my teachers.
Speaking of day to day, any key work ethic fundamentals you maintain personally today? Daily habits, practices?
I'm definitely a creature of habit. So I have had the same habits for forever in business. So the first thing I do every morning is I meditate. So I don't grab the phone, I don't check email, and I just sort of meditate about gratitude, and I manifest what I want to, I think about, and I try and manifest what I hope to accomplish that day. Then I read for 30 minutes every day, and that's where I do my deep learning. So every day, in the morning, I spend time just reading. I'll read about trends in the market. I'll read about things that are interesting to me. And then I go through my to-do list, and every night I do a to-do list, and then every morning I just reference it. And I have my urgent, and then I have my not so urgent, and I go through that, and I'll do some busy work, and then I socialize. Meaning I get, this is what I do. So I'm a network sort of builder. So then all day I'm just meeting people, whether it's in person or virtual, and I spend the whole day doing that, and that's where I kind of try and be a sponge and learn, and then I go, clean up the day, clean up my to-do list, and then I come back and rinse and repeat.
Excellent. So jumping into our topic today, let's dive into the world of PropTech and the latest advancements in the space. For those who are unfamiliar, what is CREtech and what is its primary focus? Can you share more about its origin story? Why create it and why focus on PropTech?
So the origins of CREtech was actually started in 2010 or 2011 by a good friend, Pierce Ninkin, and he started organizing like local meetups all around sort of what they would call PropTech. I kind of refer to it as more built world technology and innovation. And he was a broker at CBRE, Pierce, and beloved guy, still is, of course. And then he went on to Airbnb, and he just didn't have the time to devote. So I actually acquired it. It was a small meetup group. They were meeting, not a lot of people, but it was good. It was starting to get some traction. They were doing some small conferences, and then I started to really scale it in 2017 is when I acquired it. So we started really, investing in it and scaling it and growing it. And at the time in 2017, it was mostly like startups and venture. And having spent my whole career in the built environment, I knew at some point that was going to run out of steam if it was just technology companies and investors. That really wasn't scalable unless you brought the buyers. So I focus most of my time on, say, the real estate side of the industry, because that's where my network was. That's where all my relationships have been, and that's where I spend all my time. So what I really want to do, I'm trying to do, is like, how do we get, and it's not the biggest real estate companies in the world exclusively. It's like anybody that owns real estate, whether you're a pension fund, an asset manager, you own, a couple thousand apartments or a couple buildings or a couple, million square feet of office or a couple billion portfolio. I don't really care about how large the organization is. How do I inspire you to use some of these technology tools that'll make your company more efficient, more effective, et cetera, more money? And one of the things that you realize along the way, Yanni, is like, the real estate industry, while it's the biggest asset class in the world, it invests the least in technology and R&D. And a lot of times, like, people will come into the industry and they're new and they're like, oh, the industry's archaic. And I just sit there and go, oh my gosh, okay. You haven't spent a second in this industry. It's not archaic. And it's not that they're risk averse. This is the riskiest industry on earth. Look at what goes on your platform. People are buying, assets all the time, whether an auction or they're just buying it through, like, that's risky, man. Like, they're putting a lot of capital at risk. What they are is they're risk averse as it relates to technology and innovation, because there hasn't been a lot of great use cases for them to emulate. And everything kind of works okay. It's worked that way for generations. The greatest wealth creation in history is probably created in real estate. So, who are we as an ecosystem come along and lecture and preach and say, oh, you got to use this. And if you don't, you're backwards or you're behind. Bullshit. It's working fine. You know what I mean? The fax machine is still alive and well in a lot of organizations. It's okay. But what I try
if it ain't broke, right?
If it ain't broke. But what I try and say, Yanni, is like, look, there are more efficient ways to source deals. There are more efficient ways to raise capital. There are more efficient data platforms for you to understand and make better decisions. There are better ways to market. There are better ways to lease an apartment using a virtual leasing assistant. There are better ways to build, to construct. It's just like, how do we get the built environment to just build better, operate better? And, that's kind of like my mission, and do less harm.
Right.
As Chris Sacca says, do less harm, unfuck the planet, because we do as an ecosystem contribute to a lot of the waste and the carbon emissions. So that's also very, very important to me. So what CREtech's trying to do is get the real estate industry to show up and discover technology and innovation. Typically, the way we do it, Yanni, is like, we'll put the real estate industry on stage and those early adopters and say, tell your story about what you're doing, whether it's multifamily, office, logistics, retail, or hotel. And then go discover. So I just think of ourselves as more of like a sort of discovery platform.
Yeah, no, and I mean, this kind of gets into my next question, which is, can you talk about, some of the content that you create, both within commercial real estate and surrounding it? What are some PropTech advancements that you're, excited to see? What's exciting to you and why?
Well, I think, again, it just goes back to that comment about, like, like you said, if it ain't broke, right? So if you see, I'm so fortunate because I get to sit in closed door meetings with real estate people all day long, of all shapes and sizes, right? And they'll tell you, here's why we don't adopt this, that, or the other thing, but here's what we're looking for, right? So I think what I'm seeing working is those tools that, they're sort of, whether they're multiple point solutions, that's very, very important, because you can't ask a real estate organization that has not adopted a lot of technology to all of a sudden there's 10,000 solutions on the marketplace. So you can't expect them all to just sit there and sort of weed through all of them. So it's got to be things that are working. So, I think a big emphasis today is, operating efficiency, transactional efficiency, and then, addressing some of the problems in the marketplace, supply chain, labor, risk. The real estate industry obviously responds to risk. So how do you help me mitigate risk on a transaction, both on, making sure that what I bought or what I sold, how I did that with great information and great data and great insights. Because the days of, like, I heard from my buddy, or I heard from somebody, a whisper that's going to go on the market, or like, those days are gone. So the real estate industry is waking up to a lot of this sophisticated data to inform their decisions, and risk as it relates to sort of climate as well, and other issues as well. So I think, like, the market today, it's, our biggest challenge has been, and it's sort of like what I get frustrated about all the time, is like, we as an ecosystem, we celebrate the wins of dollars and venture going into the ecosystem. That is a false fucking barometer. Like, it's good, it's wonderful, but the real barometer is adoption. How are we doing getting real estate companies to use these tools, and are these tools growing? When we had sort of the great sort of like venture reset, a year or two ago, it was because there was a lot of startups that weren't generating the revenue that they needed, and they were relying on fundraising. Well, that's not a business plan. That's not a business model. So there's definitely more discipline in the ecosystem, and companies are not across the board, but companies are definitely scaling and growing and building real, sustainable businesses like Crexi. So I'm bullish, very bullish, but it's not across the board, and we got a lot of work to do. So we talk about content. We just, we we've had so many incredible speakers at CREtech. We just had recently, don't want to date this podcast, but we had the CEO of JLL, and he was on, interviewed about at a tech conference. I mean, that's a sign of progress. He was talking about AI. He was talking about the future of work. He was talking about office space. He was talking about sustainability. We've had like the biggest REITs in the world and their CEOs. We've had the biggest private investors in the world. We've had the biggest pension funds in the world, asset managers from Brookfield to Blackstone and their C-suites and what have you on the innovation front and on the operating front. And we're making progress. We're definitely making progress.
So, that kind of brings up a good point. Where do you see entrepreneurs or VC poking around for untapped opportunities? Like, where should they be looking and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple categories today, Yanni, that are getting attention. And look, if you're building something that has solving a problem and it's got a big addressable market potential, you could raise money today. And we're seeing a lot of early stage capital being invested in the ecosystem. And if you're a later stage and you've got real revenue, and you've got real traction and stickiness in the product, you're also able to raise money. There are a couple categories, having said that are getting, a lot of attention right now. So obviously anything that is really AI and not just, a remaking of a website saying AI infused or AI built. Like if you're really leaning in on AI or generative AI, that's a category that a lot of investors are looking to deploy capital to. I mean, I've sat with, and spoken with the largest private equity firms in the world. And when they talk about their categories of where they're investing their dollars, a lot of it is real estate, AI, just because of how unorganized the data is, how fragmented it is. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in AI across the board. I think there's a lot of opportunity in construction tech because, again, of the problems that are facing the industry, as I said, like labor, supply chain, theft, et cetera, et cetera. Also on the material side, I think construction's got a great opportunity. It's a massive untapped market. So embodied carbon, which is the material side of the industry, is a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions. It's 11% of all greenhouse gas emissions is coming from materials. Yeah, in construction. So I think that's also got a big opportunity. And I think climate tech. I mean, the built environment is, what most people don't know, is 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions. It's the largest single emitter of any industry. 29% of the operating carbon is emanating from buildings, and then 11, as I said, from embodied. And it's a $20 trillion marketplace over the next 10 or so years that has to be invested to decarbonize buildings. I mean, I don't have to tell you all at Crexi. I mean, it's if you've got a B building, that's got some climate risk to it, that is what we would call a dirty building. That market is going to be stressed and it's uninsurable. So I do think that the industry is kind of starting to wake up to the emergence of this category of B, so it was a brown to green. And I think that is going to be in a massive market in the near future. And you're already starting to see some real estate companies being formed to go out and buy those asset classes. So I'd be curious to see what the Crexi data says about that.
Now, Michael, I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out for a second and, tell me, what do you think are the most important factors that will impact the potential of advancement of various PropTech sectors? Is it going to be legislation, economic trends, local laws, climate change? What is it going to be?
That's a great question, Yanni. I think about it a lot. As much as there's some good that's being done on the legislation front, I think the Carbon Reduction Act, also known as the Inflation Reduction Act, I think it was a good piece of legislation, probably the best piece of climate legislation this country's ever had. I think that there's a lot of good government action in places like New York City with Local Law 97 and Boston and Boulder, Colorado, across the country and in Europe, very, very progressive in terms of legislation to force the decarbonization of real estate. I don't look to it. I don't depend upon it. I don't think it's the answer. I think it's the private sector. I've always said, we're a capitalist society. There's nothing wrong with making money and doing good at the same time. In fact, I think that's what we should all be kind of thinking about, doing good in terms of an impact in society, doing good and impact in the community and in the environment. So I think the drivers are just like the marketplace. That's why I look at it. So like, again, I'm talking to, somebody at Crexi. I mean, if buildings are transacting on your platform, it's because they're clean and they're green. Well, that's a great friggin' thing. So the marketplace will determine it. If people come in and I connect with these types of investors all the time and they see opportunity to buy things at a discount because of the marketplace, because of low demand in the office sector or higher interest rates or what have you, and they improve them and they flip them and make a lot of money, that's great. It's a marketplace at work and it's healthy and it should work that way. So I'm a free market guy. I think legislation is good, but so I'm not going to shit on it or poo-poo it. But now I'm a free market capitalist. Make money and do good. I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with that. So in terms of drivers, Yanni, to answer the question, I guess directly, I just think it's like, with technology, the world, like the real estate industry is not unlike every other industry. They're trying to do more with less, right? Less employees, less headcount, with AI and generative AI, upskilling talent. There's so many ways that talent could be more effective, more efficient, more productive, smarter, better using technology. So I just think the drivers are just efficiency, money, and just operating better. So I think real estate companies are waking up. I mean, I've seen survey after survey that like 97% of C-suite real estate executives, are very focused on AI right now. Mm-hmm. And all the real estate companies are poking around it and they're going to do something. So that's good. What's the byproduct? A more efficient ecosystem, less waste. And that's good. Less waste on the material side, less waste on the human side. So, I think the drivers are all external. What do clients want? I think the other thing that's like is exciting for me is to see like the real estate industry really start to think of itself as like a hospitality industry. And it used to be like on the leasing side, get a tenant, sign the lease, we'll see you in 7, 10, 15 years, have fun in your space. Now it's like, okay, what happens in the space? Tenants want to know, is it clean? Is the air quality good? How do I use the space to lure my employees into the office? How do I give them a better experience, right? And so everything in my industry and built world technology benefits from all these sort of macro societal changes, whether it's back to work or whether it's climate. We're having to really wake up and join, the rest of the world in terms of adopting technology. We are the laggard, but it's okay. We're catching up.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears a little bit, since you speak with a lot of different companies playing in the space, I'd love to get your insights on the current commercial real estate market. First, what is your 35,000 foot overview of the sector today? Give us a broad stroke view of, different asset classes, sectors, et cetera. What's thriving and which are experiencing turbulence. And you already touched on office and older office. What else are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I think it's so excited about, and why I'm just so passionate about this industry is, we're moving from sort of like this snowflake mentality, which is like every building is its own unique. It's a building, it's an asset, and it's why I love our conference in Europe, and I've done some traveling to other cities just to learn about how they embrace just urban life. Right. And so, smart cities is an overused generic term. 15-minute cities. I don't even know what that means anymore. I think it's 5 minutes maybe now. But like we've done some small conferences, summits in Stockholm and Copenhagen, and we you know you look at what's happening in London or in just all over the world, in Singapore, and it's starting to happen in New York, and we're seeing it in other cities, starting to hopefully see it in San Francisco, is like the emergence of cities as smart and inclusive and just people friendly and cleaner. So I think like we are on, and I had a great pleasure of interviewing at one of our conferences, the great architect Bjarke Ingels from Big Architects, and just like you hang around, the cool kids, and you start to see how people are starting to reimagine cities and urban landscapes to just make them less congested and better air quality and more inclusive and smarter and less waste. So I think cities as a whole, you look at places like in New York, which is my backyard, like Hudson Yards, and what Related and others have been able to do there. It's really inspiring. And there's just so many great examples in the US of just cities reimagining themselves. Buildings are reimagining themselves to make them more, hospitable to the people that are coming through, to make them more digitally native. So, you don't have to show a badge, and you can get through with your phone, and you can, buildings are controlling energy better. So I think like the advancements in smart buildings is just so exciting, and what have you. I think malls are being reimagined, which is really exciting. I think like you think about what's happening on the industrial front, in terms of EVs and energy, and it's just incredible. Autonomous trucking and things like that. You see what Prologis is doing, and they've got a great venture group led by my friend Will O'Donnell, Prologis Ventures. I mean, what they're investing in, Yanni, it's just like it's like Jetsons. Oh, your audience probably doesn't know what the hell Jetsons is. I'm fucking dating myself again. It's like so futuristic, and it's happening now, not across the board, but it's like it's starting to happen. And then obviously data centers. I mean, I'll tell you guys, like data centers is where everybody wants to be now. I mean, that's where the puck is heading. It's already there now, just given all the demands on power and AI and what have you. I think on the battery storage front, there's some really cool things going on. So like, I just think it's like a really exciting time to be in commercial real estate. I don't really do much on the resi side, on the for sale side, so I really can't speak to that. But on the apartment side, on the condo side, health, wellness. I mean, it's just like in my 40 years of built environment, I don't know that I've seen a more innovative time. So the mindset is shifting, and I hope when I'm done, whenever that is, when they put me in the box in the ground, whatever, that like the impact was that we helped the industry, do less harm, right? Like there's no other industry in the world that inhabits as much as the planet physically than the built environment. So like again, like the great investor Chris Sakis says, like let's unfuck the planet. That's a direct quote. Excuse me. And like let's reimagine the built environment and do better, right? And leave behind for the next generation a lighter footprint that's more sustainable, that's regenerative. So that's I think at the end of the day what we're trying to do. Sounds like I'm dying. I hope not, but I don't know, it sounded like my epitaph. But yeah, that's I think so. I'm pretty fucking pumped. I mean, it's a great time. It's not without hardships, but it's pretty exciting.
So outside of advancements powered by technology, we're seeing a cyclical shift in people entering and exiting commercial real estate, such as individuals retiring or more young people from diverse backgrounds entering the space. What are you most excited about in this next wave of commercial real estate professionals? And why is now a good time to enter commercial real estate or PropTech? Is it?
I love that question. Thank you. I love that question because I'm fortunate. I don't know why they have me, but I do a lot of speaking on sort of the college circuit. And I'm just amazed that people, number one, want to show up to hear me. And how many young professionals want to enter this industry? and for a lot of reasons. Um, so I think it's like an incredible time for young people or people transitioning in their career to come into this industry. I mean, there's so much opportunity, and I got to tell you, like, there are so many jobs that are open right now. If you know where to look, it blows me away. And people just don't know where to look, though, right? But like, I tell people, like, if you go on just like some of the venture firms, their websites, and some of their open jobs as it relates to technology, I mean, it's unbelievable the jobs that are out there. I mean, thousands, and they're great jobs. So whether, I think you got to skill yourself. You got to know, about AI. You got to know how to, where generative AI is going. Uh, you got to know about the built environment. You got to know a little bit about climate. And you got to show up and do the hard work. I think there's a lot of parts of our industry that are changing. I think the brokerage side is definitely changing. I think the construction side is changing. So I think it's like it's just a wonderful time to enter this industry. I can't even tell. I wouldn't even know where to tell people to start. Like it's a wide open blue ocean, and so many opportunities.
Dive in. All right.
Dive in,
Well,
man.
Michael, given your background and expertise, I'm sure our listeners are curious about your answers to a few of our rapid fire words of advice questions. Are you ready?
I guess so. I'll try.
All right. Well, here they come anyway.
Okay, go.
All right. If you were given $50 million today and had to invest it immediately, what would be your go-to asset type and location be, and why?
If I was a real estate investor.
Sure. Yeah.
Or you just giving me $50 million.
Either way.
Oh. I mean, if I was a real estate investor, I would probably be, and I'm not. So, I mean, this, it's uninformed, uneducated. I'd probably be looking at like buying a shit ton of obsolete assets, particularly multifamily. That there's a lot of good tools out there that can turn these assets into green, healthy spaces, and probably some B office buildings in good locations that don't have climate risk. Right, because I think that's really, 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 really important. And I think the industry still has too much of a short-term mentality, and they don't see what's coming in terms of the climate risks that are here right now, right in front of us today.
Mm-hmm.
If I had $50 million and you were just going to write me a check, Yanni, thank you very much. I'll give you my address after the podcast. I'd be investing in climate tech and the built environment. I think it's, as others have said, far more eloquently than me, it's the single greatest investment opportunity in history. Bigger than the internet, bigger than anything. Maybe not as big as, AI right now, but I think climate tech in the built environment is either it's a 20 trillion or $100 trillion marketplace, whatever the hell it is. It is a ginormous marketplace because, it's all around us and we can't escape it. And there's no other industry in the world that's exposed to climate risks than the built environment. So I'd be putting all that capital, not all of it, and then I'd give it away to a lot of charity where people would have.
Nice.
Like my friends at Art Lifting, I'd give them a lot of money, and many others.
Excellent. Next question: favorite tool or software you use on the job? And this is not a trick question.
Okay, I'm going to admit that I cheat, and I don't. It's fine. I use Copilot like religiously. I'll I'll get a lot of content. I'll throw it in Copilot and ask it to summarize and ask it a few questions. So I would say Copilot and others, not just Copilot, but I use a lot of the AI tools.
And then finally, what is the most common misconception about your job or industry?
That it's easy. Yeah, I think the perception is, well, it's such a big industry. Technology is not being adopted. It's go time, and people just don't understand the friction points as to why it's so hard. That doesn't mean we're not going to get there. We're going to get there, but it is really hard. and you got to play long ball. And if you think this is going to be quick and easy, go pick something else. There's far other ways to make easier ways to make money than, either what I do or what those entrepreneurs are doing. And that's why, when you asked me that first question, Yanni, about, mentoring and what have you, that's why I just really take a lot of pride in trying to help anybody in our industry. And I'll take calls all day just from founders and entrepreneurs who are stuck or struggle or want some advice. And I just want to help because I know how hard it is. And the rewards will be there, but it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy. And if you think you're going to end up where you started, then you're absolutely wrong, because you never finish where you started. So, but at the end of the day, I think if you want to have an impact and you want to really, say that you made change for the better, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. I know you're very busy, and we appreciate you spending the time to sit down with us. Where can people find you online if they want to get in touch? Email, social media?
I don't do social intentionally. So I'm just on LinkedIn, Michael Beckerman at LinkedIn. And then people always send me messages on LinkedIn. I respond to every single one of them every day. I think that's probably the quickest way to do it. I'll get in trouble if I give out my email address, because then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then my team's like, well, you gave out your friggin' email address. What'd you expect? But you know what? Michael@CREtech.com. Whatever.
All right.
I'm not that big of a
Well,
deal.
Michael, thank you again.
Thank you, Yanni.
Taking the time to sit with us. And, thanks to everybody that tuned into this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss the next one. Visit Crexi.com/podcast to hear every episode. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for videos of our episodes. And we have recordings. Thank you. Take care. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Yanni, you're not getting off that easy. No, we're not done here. I'm stealing that freaking microphone from you. To the audience, I'm a huge fan of Crexi. I don't just mean that because I'm on the podcast, because we don't have a commercial relationship or anything like that. I'm a huge fan. If you want to know my industry at its best, where an example of a company that done it, the hard way, the right way, the authentic way, with honesty and integrity and innovation, it's this company. I mean, I genuinely believe that. I'm a fanboy, but it's like I've been a fan from day one. And if you want to understand why I get so excited about my industry, our industry, it's because I've watched a company like Crexi from the beginning. I know it's not a hockey stick, but it's great talent, great people, great culture. They friggin' have a podcast studio, for goodness sakes. That's how successful they are. Seriously.
Yeah, these plants are real, by the way. Yeah.
No, that's not. Show me that plant behind you. Touch that plant.
Dude, we don't need to look at it. We don't need to look too closely at it.
Anyway, it's a pleasure to be on, Yanni and team. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, and I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. It means a lot.